It's a it's a good point. All right, so we're going to start kind of with what do I do on the other side of the desk? Like what things am I trying to accomplish and kind of talk about what you guys can kind of see what's going on with these different representatives and recruiters that are coming in, right? So I figured that's one of the things you guys probably don't know as we go through. So I thought let's start there and then we'll work backwards. Let's go ahead and then pre-career fair, and then we'll talk a little bit about post-career fair, what to do. So that's kind of the syllabus for today. Let's get to it. All right, employer perspective, these handshake accounts, obviously, if you're doing the one-on-ones, are 10 minutes long, right? Seems like a long time, but if you guys have done them, especially if you did them the last semester, they go quick. They really do. And so one of the things you want to have is obviously you have your elevator pitch. I tend to think, from my perspective, I'll kind of dive into this right now. I think career fairs are the worst dating game out there. You guys have your elevator pitch, I have an elevator pitch, and then we kind of just, where do you go from there? You're kind of stuck. If you're out on a date, at least you got dinner or an activity or something that you can kind of use to drive the time, right? For me, one of the things as we go through here, I'll get to some of the questions, but for me, especially in the next part, I'm trying to find questions, like I'm looking through your resume. Let's say it's in person or even virtual right now. I will pull up your resume or your handshake account and kind of start looking through some of the things and see what's there. Most of the time, I think students come very well prepared with what they've done in school, right? What labs have you done? Definitely put those kind of data in there. Like if there's things that you've taken project classes and what roles you've taken on there, you can add all those things, even if you have not done an internship. You don't have that kind of background. I think those are all useful. But I'm trying to get something that makes you basically a person, right? I want to find something that you're going to talk about, and we'll talk about that coming up. But as you can tell for this first page, I think it's pretty common. If you meet anybody like at a barbecue, or a different other event, you kind of always, I think, as human beings, have these couple of questions you're trying to figure out. You're getting those first impressions of somebody. So how is the student presenting themselves? Are they confident? Are they prepared? And how do they look? How did you dress? Did you dress professionally? And we'll get into some of that about the actual virtual career fair, how you can make and set up your background and everything like that. And we'll kind of go into that. For me, the next question I'm kind of looking for is your graduation date. And I'm trying to figure out, are you looking for internship or full-time? So I can kind of think through what opportunities do I have here? And, how can you be a fit? I'll ask what division or business line you're kind of thinking about. So electrical, I've got renewable energy, I've got power. Power is a group that usually works with our cover systems group that does tunnels and covers. So like we're doing a deck park for Central 70 in Denver. Those are becoming more and more common. I know I just did a project that did one in Dallas, and they're doing another one in Dallas. So they're going to make sure the power gets to the different cover systems, the ITS, the fire system, all that. So obviously both are electrical engineering, but just obviously a little bit different when you're talking about the different end products. So I'll try to see, where do you want to kind of end up? And I'll ask that question. So basically, what's your best fit? Maybe what's the second fit? In civil engineering, same way, right? We've got opportunities in traffic, roadway, structures, construction. There's all kinds of different things we can probably get you into. And I'm just trying to kind of figure out where to put you guys into. I'm just trying to kind of figure those out as I'm asking those questions. Next one is what location? Are you looking for Wyoming, Colorado? Are you looking, if you're wanting to go back home, if you're not from here, right? If maybe you're from Ohio, maybe you're looking for something a little bit closer, whether it's an internship or full-time. That's helpful to know, because at that point, I tend to keep up, like I showed you, I'm starting to learn more about the other states here in the Four Corners. But as soon as you kind of get outside my area, and that's probably true of a lot of representatives, they probably know less about what's going on in other states at that point. So as soon as you can give them that, then we can kind of think about it and get other information. But you might not catch somebody that knows everything about like all the sectors, especially if it's a big company. The next one, like I told you, I'm looking down your resume or your handshake account to usually find something that shows me a little bit more about you, because one of actually the benefits we've heard from students and from representatives from a couple different companies I reached out for this presentation, they actually are thinking the virtual career fair is helpful in one fact, and that's because when you guys go to career fair, there's a lot of distractions, there's a lot of people, there's noise. Even if you walked up to the table and it was just me and you usually can see my eyes dart and just let the next person that showed up, know that they're, I'll be right with them. There's just a lot of distractions or interruptions that happen. With this, you have 10 minutes that is just you and that person, right? And that's one thing that I found is most students seem to be a little bit more comfortable overall through this, and that's perfectly fine. That's a great thing for this. I think it's been a good fit. But like I said, it's tough. 10 minutes moves. But one of the things I like to find out, and I like the question at the bottom. In essence, how do you work with people? How do you interact? Who are you as a person? That's probably the number one question I get from hiring managers when I come back to them with your resumes and all that is, not just who I kind of, we'll talk about the process of kind of rating people and doing all that. They really just kind of want to know about fit, right? Internships are probably a little bit less so, but especially for entry levels and people that we get to a little bit more further into your professional career, it's not just about what you've done or your experience. Obviously, most places are looking to see how would you fit in with, are you known as a hard worker? Like it's basically whether you're a waitress or a president of a company, right? Most people want to know basically you're going to be dependable, right? You're accountable. A lot of the same characteristics are true of any job interview you've ever done, right? And so for this one, I went ahead and put up 3 pictures for myself. I did not work at Baskin Robbins, but I did like the Ant-Man reference, so I just went ahead and went with it. But up top is the Denver Santa Claus Workshop, a great organization, long time running here in Denver. You get people from all walks of life to help out with that particular project during the holidays. So that was a great thing that I did. And then on the bottom left was my work study. That was the Geology Museum at the Paris Coal Mines. I was there the entire time. So as a civil walking in, did not know much about minerals, but left with a pretty good thing. But I got to give tours. I ran other leadership things that were at the museum. And so all those things went onto my resume. But what I like to do as a kind of a representative for a company is I'll try to find something like that in your resume so that I can have you talk. Why do I want you to do that? Well, one, usually it breaks you out of your elevator pitch. To me, usually it makes you more comfortable because if I can find something you're passionate about, I'm usually going to learn more about you. And that's true. I would say, and we're going to put that on the later slide, if you have that already lined up in your resume, you have something that you kind of want to prove out, some experience, but then you also want to talk about maybe one of your hobbies if there's something you do that has leadership qualities there as well. That's perfectly acceptable. I think that's something to talk about. I know there's a lot of music programs that have associations that you can be a part of, or you take a leader position. I'm trying to think my marching band, there was leadership positions that necessarily weren't, you're voted on president, thing like that. You may be a section lead or something like that, right? Every company's trying to find where those leadership qualities come from. Let's put it that way. Let's go on to the next slide. So for me, what am I doing after our initial meeting? So the one-on-one, right? I'm going to finish up my notes. So what are those notes? I'm going to do some specifics. I'm going to do kind of, like we said, what business line, and if I know the hiring manager, I'll write that down as well. Say, hey, I'm going to get this over to Laura for environmental. They're looking in Denver, type thing. Key details, memory joggers. So those things that we talked about that make you tell the story of you. It's certainly beneficial for me. I always tell a story. There was a guy from mine named Jacob. I finally remembered his name, but for almost a year and a half, so 3 different career fairs, I knew his resume. I didn't know his name. So I could say, hey, you worked at that construction company in Fountain, did concrete, did all this. Like for some reason, I remembered his resume way more than his name. Fairly embarrassing for me. So anytime I had a person with me, I would always say, hey, this guy's got a great resume, and I would have to introduce him. And it was fully to have him say his name. So like I said, it's we can talk about how virtually actually this is somewhat helpful to me as well. Details on fit, like I said, what kind of person were you, and kind of how did I feel like if young, energetic, things like just simple things like that. It's so as an intern, you're kind of just coming in. That's maybe not quite as important, but definitely gets to be more and more important, like we said, as entry level, and then you progress in your professional career. And then unfortunately, 10 minutes, the handshake videos run 10 minutes. They can run a little bit longer, but unfortunately, I'm usually running into somebody else's 10 minutes. So I have to quickly run to the next appointment. So I do have for you guys, like, virtually, I do keep, your name, like I said, all the notes. So, but when we're in person, I will actually write it on top of your resume usually. And then I will scan those and send those out to the different units. So that they have all those notes in. But I would say the person stuff, the current usually when I get an email back or a phone call about what happened, what happened at career fair, what did I find? That's usually number one topic as we go through it. Sometimes there is questions about, does this person have a certain type of experience, things like that. That stuff does come up, but I would say that the culture and fit stuff is definitely comes up a lot more. Career fair ends. What do I, what kind of happens next for me? In person, yeah, usually you've got like 60, 70 resumes if you go to an all-day career fair. I remember my first career fair, just sitting at dinner with my girlfriend at the time, who then became fiance and my wife. But I just remember thinking, I'm like, it was like so many faces, so many names, like so much information I was trying to hang on to, right? And that's kind of what happens. So the next day you start to gather through resumes, and I usually talk to the representatives of Lint, and we start trying to kind of work backwards. And we first thing we do is sort out the out-of-state requests. So if you guys want to go to California and things like that, we get that kind of off our plate because we know those things are going out the door. We're going to send those to those hiring managers, and that's not our job to kind of sort those. But at least we're giving you a warm contact over there, which is the best thing we can kind of do, and talk to them. So that gets you, your resume right in front of on their desk. So I would say going to career fair and doing stuff like this, what you're doing right now, is very beneficial compared to just dropping your email into a portal and never talking to anybody. We do sort by business lines, so water, environmental, construction, project management, that kind of stuff, and go from there. I do review my rating. So at some companies, we kind of meet up and do things that are a little bit different. It sounds like most companies are similar. You kind of do the A, B, C type of setup, or do a 1 through 5. And it's going to go from there. It's kind of different. I don't think I really explained this the last time, but I did talk to one of our recruiters. So each company, has their recruiters that they're working with. So if you do apply for a job and go for the interviews, usually the recruiter type of person, HR person, calls you first and gets some details right before you get to your first interview. I talked to him, and he's a pretty well known. He owns his own brokerage now, so he's not with us. I remember he told me at one point, I just want A+ players. This was a couple years ago. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And we have a book that we all read as a company type thing. And he's like, I want people like that. And I said, well, what does that mean? And so we kind of went a little bit further into it. And I'll be completely honest with you. He was definitely shooting for the moon. And I said, well, what do you think of me? Like, do you think I'm a pretty good employee? He was well thrown back. He's like, I think you're great. You've done this, and all that. And I said, well, I'm glad I never met you at this point, because you would have never got me. I wasn't, that's not how that would have fit. So I think companies are realizing that, great candidates come from all throughout that spectrum of your education, right? So you don't have to just be the 4.0 and I, just drink, eat, sleep, all that stuff. We're definitely looking for people. That's, and you have different experiences, things like that. So if you're part of that background, I always tease. I was part of the half of the class that made the upper half possible. I was dead average, man. That was the kind of thing, but it's worked out for me in my career. You just keep working and going from there. What can you kind of look at for the virtual stuff? I do review my notes over here, and then there is a business line buildings for me that does say that they kind of want to wait to see if you guys send an email to one of the representatives, or you may look people up on LinkedIn. They feel like that extra follow-up is just that extra initiative and helps them kind of sort through candidates. It's not something that really precludes people. They told me that, but they do said that obviously that does help people out. It does help as you go through. And then we're able to send resumes and emails out to different hiring managers at that point. And just to kind of double up on that, what we were talking about with Tyler, if you guys do have a question, he'll check it in the chat window. If it's something that's kind of matters to the slide I'm on right then, we'll jump into that question right there. We won't hold it till the end. So if you guys do have questions, or at least think about them, go ahead and put them in the chat window. Why not to sweat a bad meeting? That's a very important thing to me, because I want you guys, there's a lot of times that we've come out of different meetings with people and just felt like that wasn't it. So I guess I'm not a fit for a ABC company, right? I think that's not a place for you to stop, type of thing. One of the reasons is, let's talk about the different types of representatives that do show up to companies, or for companies at these career fair events. You've got the HR person, so they know about the company, but maybe not necessarily about what each unit wants, right? You've got the recruiter, so same thing. They're looking for people and they have these job duties, but they don't necessarily do the nuts and bolts, I guess, of what an engineering firm would do. Um, you've got somebody like me that does engineering full time that's coming to do this kind of part time. A lot of times we'll send young engineers as well, so that you guys have somebody to relate to. You can kind of see yourselves, right? You can see somebody that's maybe 2 years ahead of you as they're out in the job market. And so those people, they're energetic, they do all that. But I always laugh that career fairs are the first thing that we can send people to make you feel like you actually don't know your company at all, because you guys always come up. I've been doing this for 4 years now for my company, and every career fair I get stumped on something. You guys come up with some question or something about our company that I'm like, I didn't even know we did that. That's something that's pretty useful for me, but it's always kind of fun to see other people go through that as well. And then unfortunately, you get people that are maybe just been hired and we don't have anything for them right then, and then we're just going to send them to career fair. But you kind of have a wide range of representatives, right? Um, and if you got a big company, like I didn't mean to pick on Kiewit last time, but with Kiewit is obviously a gargantuan firm. Their district offices in Omaha. They have a engineering hub in Denver, right by the Park Meadows Mall. It's there's such a huge, large organization. I want to bring them up because you may have a talk with one person and they may not even know the other thousands of people. It's kind of similar to me. I mean, I went to a relatively smaller school with mines, and people will be like, "Oh, you were here. I know somebody that went to school at the same time period. Do you know John?" And I'm like, I have no idea who you're talking about. Like, I just went to my classes for civils. I really didn't, know anything more. So it's very similar. I think you can go through and think, okay, it might not have been the best thing, but there's plenty of ways when we talk about networking and following up that you're going to create the relationship anyway. So if you're somebody that had a quick, bad 10 minutes or whatever, I can't imagine some things went off the rails in 10 minutes. But if they did, you can pump the brakes, you're fine, take some deep breaths, and we can go through some of the other steps. So I wanted to bring that up because I know some people get really worried about that. We are going to go back a slide real quick. So let's talk about, from your perspective, how you guys can kind of prepare for career fair, knowing some of that information. The first one is your types of resumes. We were talking about before with Tyler that there's several different types of organizations that you guys can apply to, right? You've got the federal government, you got the state government, you've got different consultants, other types of companies. It runs the whole gamut. So you might end up with several different types of resumes to fit what they want. Like the feds, I know, like the CV type of resume format. I put the cover letters on there because my experience, when applied for an FHWA job, federal highways, coming out of school, and as soon as it closes, you can usually email and get feedback. And they're like, "Oh, you didn't even make it out of minimum quals." I'm like, "Well, why didn't I make it out of minimum quals?" And they said, "Well, you didn't even fill out a cover letter, and specifically in the job posting, it says we want a cover letter." So I would say no matter which group you look at, definitely look at the posting and read through all those steps and make sure you're getting all those pieces there. We'll talk about that as well, that they'll usually bring up what the exceptional candidate has. So make sure you're kind of tailoring your resume just a little bit to that and to your cover letter, which is more of a narration of what your resume is. One of the things I will bring up that I didn't have last time, a couple weeks ago, I was going through an interview, kind of a 10-minute interview with a student, and his elevator pitch was great. I was fully on board, loved it, looked at his resume, and I actually stopped him a little bit after, and I said, "Hey, I want to bring up something." I said, "I'm not the hiring manager for this. This is for environmental. The person you gave me in your elevator speech was great, loved it," type of thing. But that person's not on your resume. It was very kind of bland. It was very like maybe one or two lines. It was very, type of thing. So told him I said, write down your elevator pitch if you haven't already. Make sure that person shows up on your resume, because all the stuff you did during your interview, your meeting there, the next day, as you guys can imagine, you come back to the desk and you got these resumes, you're starting to sort through and do all that. I told him, I said, unfortunately, I probably would have passed you up just because I was trying to sort through and kind of jog my memory. And if your story didn't show up on that resume, it was going to be tough for me to remember at that point. So fortunately, yeah, he went to work on it and sent me a different resume when he sent his email. I said, I haven't seen it yet. I'm not downloading this. I would probably say most of the representatives I talk to do not download your resumes directly from Handshake or that right off the bat. So you do have some time to quickly make some changes if you do find a flaw of some kind. So don't feel too nervous about that. Like for me, my hiring managers get the ones that you guys send me in your email or LinkedIn message. So the I'll talk about how Handshake kind of helps you out though, is that if I do need that memory jogger, I will go ahead and look back on Handshake. I'll have it open and I'll go through as I'm sorting through resumes. Electronics versus paper. That conversation for me is paper is a good way to get that piece of paper on the desk, right in front of the manager. My background, I would say I came out when it was the market was dead. I actually reached out to a couple people that I knew at CDOT and maybe CDOT retirees that just had happened. So people I knew and said, hey, this one page must not be doing what I want it to do because I'm just getting crickets. So I met up with a couple of them, have coffee with them. And so some of them were like, well, we might have work in a couple months and do all that. It's not the greatest thing you want to hear when you've already been sitting for a couple months. But they did give me some tips of how people like you and I'm sharing with you right now, right? Of how they look at resumes and how I can improve it. Fortunately, PB, Parsons Brick was coming through and they were getting a couple jobs and they were trying to find some people that had referrals on inspectors, construction inspectors. And the guy that reviewed my resume said, hey, I don't know if you're looking for just senior guys or if you want a brand new guy, but Ryan does have experience here at CDOT. He's done all this. Like, he'd probably be a good fit. And that, like I said, I got networked into my first job, but that was all from just getting some mentor peer review. So if you are finding yourself in a situation like that, there are ways to kind of open that door that aren't, you just banging the door of saying, you guys have opportunities or this coming up right there. Think about some different ways to kind of, grease that door open just a little bit, right? There are some times in your career when I did get told somebody a couple weeks ago that, sometimes that door's not there. If you need to, just create the door, just, full on Kool-Aid man and break through that wall. But it just, you save those for certain times. Other times you just want to kind of grease that through. All text for online applications. That's for me. CDOT was like this, that they kind of made you put it in paragraphs and put it into their system so they could search it a little bit easier. I find it to be really helpful to have just an all text version so that you can copy and paste, because otherwise you're up late, you're trying to type it all in. It gets to be frustrating, especially the fourth or fifth time you've had to do it. I don't remember it saving. I think CDOT fixed that though. My mom works at CDOT, so we've talked about this, but it just seemed frustrating every time there was an EIT1 somewhere. I felt like I was refilling it out every time. So just trying to tell you, save some frustration, have something off to the side that you guys can just copy and paste. But one of the last things you want to do, whether it's a text, email, anything like that, you want to get it reviewed. And I think you guys have some great opportunities with your own career center. Obviously, you have some other mentors available, but the career center has that opportunity for your resume to get reviewed. I would totally do it because they're just, how it is with every paper, right? There's something in there you're just not seeing, or there's maybe something that they can give you a little bit more, polish on. But usually it's especially one of the best ways to do it is to catch a flaw, right? So I think that's a great opportunity. You guys don't miss that this week or whenever Tyler and his group is running it. So absolutely take advantage of it. Let's move on to the next slide. So let's talk about your online presence. So I was talking to a third-party recruiter. So those guys usually own their own brokerage. They don't necessarily work for just one company. And we were talking about this exact topic of how does he kind of go about it for either interns or for professionals. And he was saying that he uses LinkedIn a lot. He doesn't use Facebook as much, but he definitely looks at LinkedIn because you have the opportunity to put some of your experience in and go from there. So he tries to find a good fit. Part of that is the fact that there's two approaches when you get into sales, right? There's the shotgun approach. Basically, I'm going to send my stuff out completely. I think I told the story earlier that there was a particular company that's looking for a lead for their roadway group, and they must have just shotgunned it out to everybody because I'm not that guy yet. I got another 10 years before I'm probably that person. So, but most of us in the group talked about that particular recruiter had hit up everybody in our roadway group. So obviously we're all different ranges and all of us didn't fit that requirement. A rifle approach is much more laser focused, right? It's you want to kind of pinpoint it. So he kind of does that approach. And I think that's a good approach for what you guys, you want to have kind of a certain view, but you don't want to really kind of expand that view until probably a little bit later to where you're, trying to talk to 20 to 25 companies, right? You're going to probably 5 to 10, probably somewhere maybe 5s to start. And then things don't go the way you want, probably look up to 10. But our big conversation was the professional social media between personal social media. And what do I mean by that? Do remember that you're a brand, that these companies, the recruiters we have, obviously those third-party recruiters, everybody's kind of looking at your Handshake profile or your LinkedIn profile and you want to see somebody that you would want to work with, right? Somebody you want to hire. Um, so obviously you want to work on something professional. The talk I had when I was at Mines was from our career center that said, we have engineering days. It's a day we can actually be a real college and actually party and do a few things for a couple days, but there's all kinds of events, trebuchet contests to cardboard boat races in the creek to anything you name it, right? They Coors sponsors it. Coors a couple block away, so they know there's alcohol there, so it's not like the Red Solo Cup conversation. But they're like, maybe if you're in an event or something like that, it looks fine, but maybe don't post the pictures of the unofficial keg races before the fireworks. Like maybe stop there. Might be a good idea, just not to have the keg races there. Stuff like that to that extent, but it's just simple things that you're kind of looking at some of the polished type of look, right? Just I think it's a good way to look at it, kind of have somebody look at it, for you and with you, but you're just looking through that lens, right? With somebody like me. And I think there's plenty of people, like I said, that I reached out to my mentors and got help. I think that's something you can definitely do and have your career center help. If there's something that's really, you're kind of wondering if that's a good look or not, I think that's something you can definitely reach out to. A couple questions I want to kind of just put into your brain, plant a seed here. How can you make your social media work in your favor professionally? And how do we engage with companies? So we're going to talk about it in the next couple slides. Social media, LinkedIn is, like I said, the recruiters seem to use LinkedIn the most when we're talking about how they're going to vet people and kind of reach out to other professionals. You may not feel like you have that much to share, but if you have your student organizations, you have some of the lab works you guys have done, project classes. I mean, if you have not had an internship or any other experience, there's other ways to kind of show this. Maybe you do stuff with your church, something like that. That there's plenty of places. I would rather, instead of thinking of scarcity, think about ways you can kind of expand on some of the things you do well, right? And you want to get that out to people. The way that I kind of utilize LinkedIn, and that's one of the reasons I kind of put this at the bottom, is really, or I follow companies and agencies, and you can just like the page, right? You can go through, but you can join groups like ASCE, if you're a civil engineer, IEEE for electricals, and you can kind of start from there, seeing these organizations, and that can lead into talking to people through there. I can say, if I'm talking to WSP, I can talk to. I'm trying to think. In the picture, we have Lisa Wynn there. Lisa is on the left in the kind of seafoam color helmet. She's part of plenty like ITE, a couple of different organizations. You can reach out and say, hey, I see we share, same organization, same type of tip. I'm just looking for opportunities or a way to get better. You can reach out to that person. You can use that as a warm contact, just being part of the same group. Like I said, most professional individuals, we remember, what it was like coming out like you. So I think we're more than willing to help. It does get a little tricky when you have like 50 people trying to contact you, but if it's usually like one or two with the way it usually kind of filters out, absolutely no problem. I think the story I told earlier was CU Boulder has apparently one of the few lighting programs in the country, and so our group and other companies recruit there. And so I didn't know this until a couple weeks ago, just to prove some of the things I didn't know, even though I've been at this for 4 years. But I had a couple individuals coming out of that career fair that said, hey, I'm not really sure which way to go, whether I want to do tunnels or do other type of lighting. You guys have some opportunities to talk to some people. And I reached out to my lead that I know in Boston that I work on cover systems. I worked on the US 6 tunnels project with him that we had, and he was more than happy to meet with that individual, right? So there's ways to kind of build that warm contact, even with through representatives you meet at the career fair or otherwise. So it's not just the person, and I'll put this a little bit later, never undervalue or underestimate the value of a contact. You can use that person at different times. That you may not know when you're going to utilize that particular contact, but there's ways to kind of keep that in and then use that person, even if they're not the fit that you need. They usually probably know somebody that might be the fit for you. Professional organizations, we talked about ITE and a couple other ones. Women in Transportation Symposium is a great one. Colorado Contractors Association is another one, and they're a great liaison if you're looking to get into contracting work for that, because they are the liaison for the Colorado State Legislature. So you have almost every major contractor is a part of that group because it benefits, right? Like when they've tried to do pass laws, here in Colorado, and they put the funding in, they're getting a ton of money from that group. So the contractors dump a lot of money. So like I said, they try to get their message out through that page as well as their own page. So I think that's a great way to kind of get to meet people. Online career fair. Let's kind of take a second and just talk about kind of some of the aspects here, maybe even behind me. Like I've got, I have, I tease that I have two pets. I have two coworkers here in the house. I've got a tuxedo cat and a dark charcoal. And actually, right before this meeting, my dark charcoal cat was asleep as can be. And I actually teased. I said, "They're going to record this one. I'm sorry, buddy. I gotta move you." So he was not too pleased, but it kind of got him out of the way. But one of the reasons is just to create your space, right? I was talking about before, I did a resume review presentation where in the same type of tile situation, a guy, I mean, I was in college, I know about some of the stuff that kind of goes on. They got into the room, they picked up the guy, they carried him out like it was complete shenanigans. So I tease people, I'm like, maybe, if you got roommates say, hey, this is my future, like shut the door, lock the door, kind of find a safe space, so you're not having people kind of jump in. But you got a couple of different things. Tyler and I were talking about this, so you have a couple suggestions as well, Tyler.
Actually, I have a question in the chat box. Do you mind?
Awesome. No, I do not. Go ahead.
Great. Yeah, so Corey's asking, what is the line between too much follow-up with no response versus just reminding?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think that's a classic sales thing, because I think we all have gotten the same thing from salespeople. I would say during career fair time, once a week, I usually get fed, people, and it will be obviously, I guess the touchy-feely thing is it is different between each person, right? I tend to be a little bit more open about it. I would say people are probably, if you go out 2 weeks, that's fair. I think that's probably the person that's probably the most annoyed. 2 weeks is probably enough for me. Somebody that's a little more active and honestly knows that I have other stuff on the table. So I'm, usually when you send me an email, I'm like, oh, thank you, Corey. I'm like, that type of thing. I would say that's a good fit. And you can get a little probably feel from your, if it is somebody you had a meeting with, a one-on-one, you can probably get a bit of a read, but I would say 2 weeks is probably as far out as you go. As you get a little bit closer to April, May, like I said, you probably, I'm trying to think, as you guys even get into, because you're trying to get placed in June, right? May, June type of place. The way interviews are going, I would say if you're not getting your initial responses, probably mid-March, definitely before St. Patrick's Day. I would start either finding other ways into, like, another avenue into that company if that's a place you really want to be at, or possibly expanding out a little bit as well. But no, great question. I think that's it is tough because you're dealing with people. How do people gonna turn off and just throw things away? I'll laugh. I mean, I think last night I got a phone call again from my alumni association, and I know the number, and I'm like, nope, just put it back down. Like, I'm just like, don't even want to give the $25 to get you off the phone. I'm sorry, I just don't want to deal with it right now. So completely, and they called maybe every 6 months. So just different levels. So the great question for you.
Thank you.
All right, so the spacing and lighting. So I was laughing about it earlier. I have a south-facing condo, and the lighting, and my camera seems to pick up different things. Right now, I'm lucky that actually we have clouds in the area, so the lighting in the room is actually taken a little bit better, but my camera certainly looks a little bit different. I think this is as good of kind of a basic background. You want to check a couple different options, because actually my kitchen actually has a better background. It's just kind of a little bit cleaner. But if I'm on my laptop, excuse me, for some reason the internet doesn't work as well, so it gets spotchy, but my tablet can be a little bit better out there. So usually I'm in this room because I'm right next to the router. So there might be some give and take as you're thinking through. Zoom is great because you can have the backgrounds. Handshake does not allow those kind of Zoom backgrounds that you guys kind of find and do that. So definitely kind of think about through that. Test your video and audio. There's a way to do that. Also, I think, I know for recruiters that we can set up a room for a certain amount of time to check it. So I don't know if that's available for students as well. Tyler probably can tell you a little bit more about that. And you can maybe check that with somebody else just to make sure you're kind of getting the lighting and everything that you want to look. I always like the one that says try out the outfit you want to wear. Make sure everything looks good, everything fits. We all have been in isolation. Maybe things don't look as fit the same as they did before. The other one, and I always like to teach about it, this must be one for the girls, because guys, we know we have one suit. That's it. I mean, that's it. So you know, you can try it on, but then you're not trying different color combos or whatever. That's just probably not happening. But one of the number one things that we do want to talk about is definitely dress professionally. I know as recruiters we're kind of told to come, you know, with the polo shirts that've got the brand on them. Maybe if it's cold outside, I've got the fleece that's, you know, we're all branded up type of thing. I know the first career fair I got back to, I actually did wear a dress shirt and a tie and then had the pullover, and it was made fun of by every recruiter from every company. Type of thing. They're like, "Are you trying to get a job? What are you trying to do?" So obviously, it's a little bit different when you're on this side of the desk. But the for you guys, definitely, you know, look professional up top. And to me, I actually wear, you know, dress up all the way through just because I like to follow the premise of look good, feel good, play good type of thing. So I think if you've got the full package, I think it's just you're gonna have a little bit more confidence as well. Technical issues, one thing you probably don't think of. I had somebody from one of these type of events I did that was super worried about the way his glasses were. Like his glasses were getting the glare. I don't think that's big of a deal. I kind of found when I wore glasses for one of them, I kind of leaned back in Star Wars, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. But like I said, this person was completely hung up on it. So I think if you look at it, you feel comfortable. I don't think that's going to bother. I think the person that's going to bother is you. It's not going to bother the representative at all. So that's not a big deal. The one that does, and it did happen a couple weeks ago. I had a technical issue where the person's audio didn't work. I just have my cell phone on handy or our business phone because ours comes through our computer. And I quickly, when their audio didn't work, I said, "Hey, let's get a cell, you know, let's just call. I know you only have, you know, like 8 minutes now, but let's at least chat. Let's talk." These happen. I definitely know several representatives that from different companies I've talked to that we'll set up a different time. If something doesn't work, like we can set up something once we get out of career fair for, you know, 10, 15 minutes. So we're still kind of keeping it fair to everybody. But I think these things are possible. So just have some different opportunities available as you get out. And you just want to make sure that you feel good about it, right? It does, you do get disappointed. You do kind of get anxious about it, but do know that there's ways to kind of, I think we've all been through this. I had a technical glitch right before we started the presentation, as a matter of fact. So my internet just blipped for a little bit, came right back on, but those things happen to all of us, I think, in this instance. Like before we said, have a couple points and info so that you have something to go to. I always call them my anchors, you know, things I can kind of, if I do feel like I get a little bit on a tangent or kind of go, just have some things that kind of, you know, you can always go back to as you go through your resume. Like we said, talk about maybe some of the lab work or something that kind of helps you out. But definitely the ones at the bottom, make sure that you talk about your internship, any entry level experiences you've had. And then if you don't have that, you know, go into your leadership or student organizations or something you're passionate about. I think those are always things to keep going from there. All right, next slide. So post-career fair, what we should do, and I picked this picture for a reason. So when you plant a tree, you know you can't just leave it to nature. You usually have to go back out there, you know, keep watering it until it kind of gets its own root system in, do all that. That's very similar to this. It's very much a sales kind of talk, but the famous saying they have is fortune is in the follow-up, and that's very true. You want to kind of keep leading into that. So make sure you send your email with the appropriate resume, whether you go through LinkedIn or you send it through the email. So I give my contact info in my sessions. So you guys can send an email. Apply to the online posting. This one's important because even though I have your paper resume, unless you're in like our online system, you haven't really applied, because when I go to interview you, I have to go through our system and actually click, you know, I want to talk to Tyler. Well, if Tyler's not there, then obviously we can try to work through that, but that makes it a lot easier than if you're in both places. That's why I was kind of talking about the paper versus electronic. They kind of have different uses, but they're all part of your package of trying to get through this process. I would look up the person or a different representatives that came, or even people that are that work at that company. Like I said, maybe ones through your professional organizations. You know, you can kind of reach out to those groups. We'll talk about a couple different groups, maybe give you some ideas here. So like I said, not trying to be so scarcity mindset. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about abundance as we go through. The next one for networking, so mentors. I like to tell a personal story here that one of the people I met at career fair, we actually, for my senior design, we did the west track at the Railroad Museum in Golden, and there was some geotechnical work there. We did the surveying, and a couple of the other things, but we didn't have the geotechnical background, which is completely understood. And obviously our professors knew we didn't have that background, but they still wanted it in our, to the client, right, to the Railroad Museum. They wanted us to give a presentation on it. Well, I reached out to one of the people I met, and he worked at CDOT as a geotechnical engineer, and he actually gave us a full thing on it, right? We went through the tests and we did all that stuff, but he was able to give us the idea of how do you read the results? How do you do all that? Well, we said, Craig Whedon said this, and he was and gave third party credibility, right? It was perfect. Put that into my senior design. So it doesn't have to just be job stuff. This can be stuff that you do. I was telling the personal board of directors, those are people that you reach out to, your mentors, just like a normal board of directors. Those people kind of come and go, or you can switch them out, right? If it's not a formal position, you don't have to call, say, hey, Tyler, I'm sorry, I'm having to take you off the board. Like that's not, what that's meant for. This is just your personal people, your Rolodex, if you're old enough, to reach out to and kind of get some sense. We, a lot of our upper management talk about people that they talk to even now about what opportunities they should take and do all that, even though they might be leading our entire office. 1-800 call friend was when I was in construction. There was always something that happened about 2 to 3 times a week on construction that I would just have to call and say, hey, have you done this before? Have you seen this? Have you worked with this contractor? How did you kind of handle this? Like those were people I always got help from. So I found that always to be helpful. Volunteering and charity are great networking opportunities. I think they're great anyway to be a part of. But one of the examples I want to talk about is WTS Transportation U. And that's a great opportunity in Women in Transportation Symposium where young professionals go back to the high school level, and either they go to the high schools where they have usually a partnering firm when we can meet up in person, and they would go to HDR, our office, or somewhere, Michael Baker, and they would have the kids show up there, and they would do an activity and learn and all that. So it was a great way for young professionals to kind of help those young women that are in high school to be, continue their progress and be excited about STEM type of projects. Why I think that's important. One, you get to meet a bunch of people from other groups, if you have multiple companies, different organizations that help that type of situation. Also, the people that are on those committees and give it their time, those people aren't lazy, right? Those people, if you're giving your time and you're running a committee and you're doing all that, you're certainly probably a center of influence of some kind because you're actually putting forth a lot of effort. So I think those committees always need help. They're a great way to give back, but also get your foot in the door as you go from there. One of the stories I also told earlier, we had an intern that we had for a couple of years. She goes to these different virtual seminars that are out there now, and she actually posts to her LinkedIn of like, thank you to, I think it was like Amy Ford from FHU, great presentation, and kind of went through the things she liked and all that. So even if you're somebody that doesn't have any internship experience and all that, that's something that a recruiter will see on there and say, oh, look, they went to this seminar and they liked it, and this is what they're into. So it's other information that you can get. I think it's like I said, there's some really good presentations that are going on virtually right now. Networking, search alumni. I think that's an easy one, but I don't think it gets utilized enough. Like I said, usually if you're in the family, you're in the club, people are usually obviously very well, but they're more than happy to help you guys as you go through. So definitely hit up your young alumni or even somebody that might be a little bit further in their career. I think that's always helpful. Friends and family, who do they know, right? That's always something that you kind of run into. Like I said, hobbies have people rock climbing, you have people from all walks of life do it, accountants do all that, but those accountants work with, engineering firms, or they work doing all that. You may find a way. It's my favorite one I like to say that's just kind of just out there was I was on vacation at Walt Disney World and I took the train tour that you can take. You got to get up way early and you can see all the trains they kind of use to get around the park on the outside. So a lot of cool history in there. Won't go into that. But right in the middle of the tour, I think there was something that somehow, I don't know how it came up that I was an engineer or I was a student. One of the guys on that tour was one of the leads for the master program for rail at Florida University for the Gators. And I just told him, we were kind of talking to all that, and I talked about me being dead average, right? I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm not the person you're looking for to go in your master's program. He's like, we don't get very many people to go in this program. We need a certain number. He's like, if you applied, you would certainly get considered. So I'm on vacation, right? I'm not even thinking about school, professional, anything like that. And I got a contact out of that. So sometimes things will just happen, right? So be ready for it. Life's a journey in that way. So, but one of the things, like I said at the bottom, I just want to say, never underestimate the value of a contact, because that person may not be someone you use right away. It also may be something that comes in later as you go through. I always laugh and tease Christy, my friend, that my former coworker, runs Transportation U, and she was the member of the year for WTS, Young Member of the Year a couple of years ago. Her entire bridal party is made up of pretty much engineering people for, lots of women from other firms. So I always laugh that she kind of, did that in a different way. But, you don't have to set up your, wedding party like that. But that was kind of something funny that how that all worked out for her. So, all right, I know we got just a couple minutes to go through, but I just want to thank you guys for your time. I know you're kind of listening to me just chat and talk, but we got a chance that you guys can ask some questions. I've got my contact info, but ask away. This is a good chance to have Tyler and I help you out.
Before you guys have any questions, I actually want to make a couple notes about networking. I'm glad you focused on networking so much, because there's a bunch of studies out there that show that around 70% of professional positions are obtained through networking. So it's super important. And with regard to networking kind of anywhere, I used to be a raft guide. And, when you're in a boat with 6 other people, you just talk. So I networked with every single boat that I took down the river. And it did benefit me at one point. So you can network anywhere. All right, go ahead. If you have any questions, feel free.
Like we might be having some typing here, but yeah, it's I've been networked in every position I've had. I know there's people that do get picked from a portal and you do all that, but I can tell you that even now, like it's as you get a little bit further along, because I think the one other piece of advice I've always gotten is you never know who's watching. So whether you guys get any opportunity, work hard, do all that, because I remember being at the flood recovery. I did not think anybody was really paying attention to what I was doing, but I definitely got taken out to lunch by a lot of different firms. They're like, hey, if you're ever looking, we think you've done a great job here. You've done all that. And it's just, you just put your head down and you work hard, you do what you're doing. And like I said, you don't know possibly who's watching and being impressed. So yeah, so I think that's another big piece of advice that I've gotten that's really served me well.
For sure. Yeah. I've come to refer to that specifically as like passive networking, like just working hard and getting recognized. And out of that, you kind of build connections. And then active networking would be like job fairs or information sessions or reaching out through LinkedIn would be, actively networking. Both are very beneficial. Yeah. All right. Does anybody have any questions for Ryan?
I don't think it could be that good. I was like, there's got to be something. There's got. Well, you do have my contact info there, and that's one of the things I like to do. Just understand the whole follow-up thing we were talking about. I got a couple things I got to catch up on, but anytime you guys email, just if you have questions, I'm free to do that. If it's something I can't answer, I usually try to reach out to other people as well. So especially when you're talking about electrical, I went to mines actually as an electrical, and after 2 classes, figured out that probably was not going to work out for me too well. So I switched over to civil, but that's something I was interested in. Like I said, I've got a couple good contacts, at my company and other companies that do that as well. So like I said, just if there's any way I can kind of help you guys out, just feel free to drop me a line and we can go from there.
Cool.
I just wanted to say thank you so much. That was really helpful. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That's the premise, right? We were talking about this when we were trying to set this up with Tyler. It's really about you guys, right? I mean, I can just get up. I feel like this stuff's more fun, honestly, than doing our information sessions, because we're trying to kind of talk about our company and sell it a little bit, to kind of get you guys interested in doing that. I love stuff like this because it's truly about you guys. It's not, that's the thing I find to be when I do my resume reviews at different schools or stuff like that. It's really nice to just sit there and let's talk about you. So if you have ideas about that stuff you would like to know from industry professionals, things like that, Tyler is fully, if you guys want to give that feedback, he's ready to go to bat for you for that. So.
Yeah, speaking of, you did mention resume reviews. We do have resume reviews this week. So if you just look at the weekly bulletin email that we send out, you can see when our drop-in resume reviews are for this week. And I'll be more than happy to meet with you, talk about your resume, and we can chat about anything else if you'd like. Cool. Well, if you all don't have any questions right now, again, Ryan has his email at the bottom of the screen. Feel free to reach out to him at any point. But if not, thank you so much for joining, and good luck at the job fair.
Yeah, good
Thank
luck,
you both.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Cool. Good job. You sounded way more comfortable this time. Second time around.
Yeah, I think that's true of anything, right?
Yeah,
So you get
sure.
to, because the first time, I remember I did a radio review for or interview for a hobby I have, a couple months ago, and I knew it was going to be kind of intense about certain topics. So I remember having the multiple screens, and so I had kind of my cheat sheet up above, and the whole
Yeah,
time you're talking, you're looking up there like, somebody covering, is there something doing? It just was so, even because I'm that type of person, I even like listened to it again later when it actually
yeah,
got aired, and I was like, oh man, like I should have done this. Like it
yeah,
was so funny that I think we did 3 episodes in one shot for different subjects. So it's it was all done anyway, but I
yeah.
still fretted it way too much. So yeah, this time it felt, it like most things, I think you get a sense of like, okay, I know what